Thank you everyone for joining us on time. We'll just give everyone else a moment or two to get through all the clicks and get the technology working so they can join us as well. I see lots of people streaming in, so we'll hang on for just a few more moments. And thanks again to everyone who has joined us on time. Okay, quite a few new people have just joined us, but it is just past 2, so we are going to begin, and I will do that by officially saying hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. This is the first webinar of our free membership Growth Online Summit 2018. And every day this week at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, a top expert is going to join us to share the strategies used by successful organizations to grow and keep growing, especially in today's world where it seems harder than ever to get anyone's attention, and we all know that. So welcome to day one, and this afternoon, they're changing my slide. Okay, this afternoon, Joy Duling joins us. And since 2005, Joy Duling from The Joy of Membership, aptly named, has been a behind-the-scenes resource for associations, trade groups, and membership-based nonprofits. And Joy has a very unique perspective on what it takes to be successful in community building. So I'm really glad that Joy could be here with us today to share her experience and expertise. And we'll bring on Joy very shortly. In the meantime, let me introduce myself. That's me on the left of your screen, Donald Cowper, and I'm here on the Wild Apricot content team, and sitting beside me are my colleagues Rano and Sonia, who will help host this webinar. And yes, there you see a snake around Rano's neck. That is not a scarf. Fortunately, he didn't bring in that snake. Thank you very much for keeping that snake at home. Despite the fact that he likes snakes, Rano is a very wonderful person, and he's here with us today to help you with any technical issues you might have. So during the webinar, feel free to ask any questions to us or to Joy, and to do that, you can use the chat box. I want to make a couple of quick reminders before moving on. First, I want to let you know that we are recording this webinar and the other summit webinars this week, and we'll be sending you an email with a link to the recordings. We'll do that next week, so watch out for that. All right, CIE credits. I also want to let you know that by attending today, you are eligible to earn 1 CIE credit. And any webinar you attend this week, the same applies. All right. Before we get going, just another couple of minutes here, let me briefly say that today's webinar is being brought to you by Wild Apricot. I know that many of our customers are on with us today, so a big welcome to all of you, but I also know that we have many people here who aren't familiar with Wild Apricot, and I want to welcome you as well. And for those of you who don't know, let me just briefly say that Wild Apricot is membership management software, and it's actually an all-in-one solution for anyone running a membership organization. And that's because you can manage your member and contact database, you can run your events, build your website, process all your payments, and so on. And many of our customers consider it a lifesaver because of all the hours it saves them each day in administrative tasks, and that frees them up to focus on fulfilling their organization's mission. And we're quite thrilled with what many of our customers have been able to accomplish. We've watched lots of them grow since we started 12 years ago, and they've watched us grow too. And thanks to our customers, here you see that we've been ranked as the #1 rated membership management software solution on the market for the last 6 years. Okay, and while many of us pride ourselves on helping people with great software, we're also a leading provider of free educational content, which you can find on our blog and in our webinars like today's. Okay. Now, if you do have questions about Wild Apricot, we're here to answer them, but we'll do that at the end of the webinar at the top of the hour. So you're all free to stick around with us at that time if you're able, and Rano is here. He can help with all of those questions. So let me introduce Joy. There's Joy's picture, and Joy is the founder of The Joy of Membership, as I said, and that organization helps nonprofits grow their membership base since 2005. Joy and her team have been supporting associations and other member-based organizations as they launch and run and grow their programs. In helping nonprofits, she also leads a membership-based nonprofit herself, growing the initiative from just a concept around a conference room table to a fully functional 501c3 supported exclusively by membership contributions. And you can check out her website, Joy of Membership, and Rano is going to paste the link in the chat in just a moment, so you can check out Joy's website there. And I will say, Joy, please come on board here. The floor is yours, and thank you so much for everything you've done getting ready for today and sharing everything with our audience. Thanks so much, Joy. You can take over the presentation, and I will mute myself.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Hopefully everybody can see my screen now. It's awesome to be here. You have such an awesome lineup of speakers this week, and there really could not be a more timely or relevant topic for membership organizations. In fact, I think when you look at all the potential challenges that associations and membership-based nonprofits could face, growth is by far the biggest concern of most organizations. So there may be some rare exceptions where, a group says, hey, I think we're at about the right size for us, but most leaders would likely rank growing the organization pretty far up the priority list. So I don't know if any of you are experiencing this, but over the past few years, I've been hearing a lot of organizations say that it's getting harder to get people to join. And most of the people that I talk to describe the problem the same way. They'll say something like, my people just aren't joiners, or people don't join associations or memberships anymore. And that's why it has always seemed odd to me that the same people who say this talk about having a marketing problem. And I think when, we feel stuck in our growth, marketing emerges as, the logical solution. Like, we don't have enough people coming in, we're not experiencing the growth we want, we probably need to do more marketing, or our marketing needs to be more effective. And I think that is just the natural thing to think. But it's actually not the answer. And I know it's probably not as shocking as this picture, but I like this guy. He makes me laugh, so that's why I use him. But today we're going to talk about, why more marketing is not the answer, and why more marketing won't make non-joiners miraculously become joiners. And what I think you should actually do instead in order to find growth in today's world. In fact, I'm going to share 3 things that actually do build growth that don't involve any marketing at all. And these are probably things that you can actually start tweaking today. I'm also going to talk about what people today actually do value. In fact, I would go so far as to say that we've all been conditioned to crave these things. And to the extent that you can build these things into how you operate your membership, your members and prospective members are going to see you as more aligned with what they want and more relevant to their lives. And I know people always like to, hear what, organizations are doing kind of in the real world, not just conceptually. So I'm going to tell you a few stories about clients of mine who have tried some things that have worked and things that haven't. So that's kind of where we're going to spend our time today. Now, I want to start with the idea that the world around all of us has changed. And I think for most of us, we would see this simple statement and feel like this is probably undeniably true. The world feels like it's accelerating, And the people that we need to reach with our messages and our membership offerings are operating in a very different way than they used to. I mean, even a decade ago. And this new world that we all live in has changed our expectations. And if it's changed our expectations, you can naturally see that you can actually expect that it would change what the people that we serve are expecting from us as well. So I have several things that I think are illustrative of the way the world has changed. So the first is that we and our members now expect 24/7 access to information and resources. It used to be that people would come to, an association meeting once a month to get their information. And, that was just the way things were done. Well, now people naturally expect to be able to access almost anything they want to know immediately, and preferably from their cell phones, the little computer that they hold in their pocket. So my dad was in the hospital this weekend, actually, and he's fine. But as I was sitting there in the hospital room with him, we were watching some news coverage. I was talking about the recent election results and some recount work that was happening, and they were using some terminology in that broadcast that neither my dad nor I had heard before. So I whipped out my cell phone and I looked up what exactly they were talking about to help us better understand the issue. So in 60 seconds, I was able to answer a question that neither of us knew the answer to, a minute beforehand. So the truth is that, people nowadays can find information on almost any topic instantaneously, anytime they want. The second thing that is really different about this world that we live in is options. Options for the things that we want and need have never been more plentiful. So whether we're talking about 100 types of soda pop that are being offered in the grocery store, or we're talking about hundreds of blog articles that are written in our industry, choice is a luxury that is available to most of us. That 24/7 access and the choices that are available, that's been multiplied exponentially by technology. And our expectations around what technology is able to do for us are higher than ever. We expect organizations today to have functional websites. We expect to be able to find the information that we want when we want it. We expect to be able to register for events without having to talk to a live person. We expect to get automated reminders and, for organizations to have ways to remember who we are and what we need from them. We also live in a world where self-organization has never been easier. And you don't have to look any farther than things like GoFundMe or Kickstarter to see clear evidence of people rallying around something that they believe in. They don't have to wait for an established organization to do something. In just a few mouse clicks, they can take their own ideas to market, or they can create their own way of supporting a cause that they care about. And then the last big thing that I like to highlight when I'm talking about the changing world is just the concept of movement. There's more rapid movement today than we've ever seen happening. And while this is clearly driven in part by that whole 24/7 access thing and the availability of new technologies, the side effect is that people are busier than ever. And there's less tolerance of traditions and process, because when we want something, we want it to happen now. There's this whole instant gratification feeling that we all have from the businesses that we interact with and the organizations that we join. So when you stop and think about those earlier statements about, people just not being joiners, can you see why that might be the case? And can you also see why marketing, although it sounds like that's what you'd want to do for growth, actually doesn't address any of these challenges? It doesn't make us any better at these things. So if marketing isn't the solution to growth, in light of all of these dynamics that we are now dealing with, what actually does respond in a way that helps you grow like you want? And I believe it's actually three things. And I believe that these apply to any membership-based organization. We have connection, we have capacity, and we have consistency. And our organizations actually have quite a bit of control over these three things. Now, I'm going to walk through each of these in detail. And so hopefully you can see how each of these can be leveraged for growth. So let's look at connection as the first one. So connection, from my perspective, involves thoughtfully constructing your member experience end to end so that you're understanding what members want and you're able to deliver exactly what they need from you when they need it. Now, I'm going to show you this diagram, and I think this is probably the most important slide out of this entire presentation today. So if you want to screenshot it, feel free to screenshot it. But at the end, at the end of our time together today, I'm actually going to give you access to a one-page score sheet so that you can determine, how well you're doing in each of these 8 stages. As I mentioned, connection is about understanding what people need from you and when they need it. So while you all have a unique membership and probably unique offerings, there are 8 very predictable stages of member experience. So what happens in the first 3 stages makes people more likely to join. What happens in the next 3 stages makes them more likely to engage. And then the last 2 stages, what happens there makes them more likely to stay and renew. So if you look at this from left to right, in the first stage, people are discovering you. They're learning that you exist. In the second stage, they're thinking about whether to join or not. They're contemplating the offerings. The third stage of activation is when they actually take that specific action that you've set up for them to become a member. So maybe it's an online application, maybe it's a paper application, whatever you have them do in order to raise their hand and say, I'm in. That's what happens in that third stage. In the fourth stage, they're going through an onboarding process. So you're helping them kind of come into the organization. In early engagement, they're experiencing quick wins that hook them in. In extended engagement, they are getting invested enough to participate long-term. And then pre-renewal, they're recognizing that they've gotten enough value, so they decide to renew. And then post-renewal, they've actually renewed, and they're moving into becoming a loyal member that is advancing in their relationship with you. So if you take nothing away from this presentation today, except this one slide, you can learn a lot about your organization and your opportunities from growth just from this. Because what happens inside each of these stages has an impact on whether you're going to grow or not. Now, one organization that kind of went through this process and looked at their member experience was a Nature Photography Association. And what they found was that as they started looking at their member experience and the engagement opportunities that they had along the way, they discovered that they had 3 very different types of members. So, and those 3 types of members wanted 3 very different things from the association. So the first group were professional photographers who just wanted to make, I shouldn't say just, they wanted to make more money from their craft. They were professionals, they were building businesses, they wanted to know how to make more money from their nature photography. So the second group were more amateur photographers. And what they really wanted to get out of the association was how to get better at taking nature pictures. So they wanted to be better photographers. And then the third group was they found they had all of these people who were really just members because they were lovers of nature and lovers of nature photography. So that was what was bringing them in. So, in looking at their member experience, they realized that they had essentially been offering the same member experience to all of these people, which made the journey not feel perfect for really any of them. And it made it more of a watered down experience. So, when they were out talking to people about what they got, it didn't feel like custom designed for them. And when they were sending out their offerings to people, some things would be the right fit, some things wouldn't. You know, when you get to the end of the year and someone's looking at renewing, then they have to go, well, did I get enough? You know, it's all this other stuff, but it wasn't really relevant to me. So all of those challenges, you know, found in the member experience impacted their growth. It made it harder to bring people in, harder to get people to engage, and harder to get people to renew. So the other thing that looking at it in this way allowed them to think about was whether they even wanted to be bringing in all 3 types of members, or did they want to specialize more in the types of members that were let's say more profitable for their association. And easier to work with, and to be able to make those sorts of decisions. So what they ultimately decided to do was split their member experience into tracks so that they were able to customize what people got based on what they were wanting to do. And it was this process of understanding how they wanted to connect with members that led them to be able to create a more engaging and attractive experience. So the second piece in kind of the 3 components that aren't marketing is capacity. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't think about when they're focused on growth, because when our eyes are set on a growth goal, we're just like, bring in more people. That's ultimately what we want, more members. And it's especially important for small organizations to recognize the impact of this component, because growth can actually be a hidden saboteur. A lot of people don't realize that the connected and engaging member experience that we just talked about can be completely sabotaged by unmanaged growth. And in our best intentions to build member experiences that are inviting and responsive to people, sometimes we create structures that aren't sustainable through growth. And in the long run, not having sustainable processes that you can carry out even as you're experiencing growth, that will negatively impact your ability to move forward. So I have this rule that I always tell my clients, and I just call it the 10X rule. Before we implement any growth or engagement practice, we simply ask, if I had 10 times the number of members coming in, could we still do this? How difficult would it be to do this? Now, for some of you, that might mean, if you only have 1 member per week joining now, the question is, okay, if I had 10 members coming in every week, could I carry this out? One of the places where I see this come up a lot for smaller organizations is spreadsheets, things being tracked on spreadsheets all over the place. And growth will throw spreadsheets for a loop. So knowing that you have the systems in place, the technologies in place, the people in place to manage growth is really important. Now, for larger organizations, or for an organization where maybe they do an annual membership campaign, and in an annual campaign you have 100 new members coming in all in one fell swoop. Could you carry out your process that you're doing there if you had 1,000 people joining during that time period? If the answer is no, that would drive us absolutely crazy. Then you have to look really closely at that, because not having the capacity to grow will hinder you. So by leveraging technology, getting the right systems in place, you can actually enhance your ability to grow. You can have the capability of following up with new members, asking them about referrals to other friends who might want to join at the same time. You have more of an opportunity to onboard them in an effective way. So this is just something that a lot of people don't think about, and it really does have a big impact. So an example of this capacity issue and its impact on growth is an association that I was working with that had a lovely welcome gift that they sent to every new member. They called it a shock and awe box, and mainly because they wanted it to be over the top wonderful, so that the recipient would be in shock and awe, with the assumption being that if they were delightfully surprised by this thing, it would gain their loyalty, and they would tell their friends and that sort of thing. So it was a wonderful gesture, but it became apparent pretty quickly that there was no way that they could gather all of the separate elements that were necessary to pull off what they wanted to do on any kind of scaled basis. And what they were charging up front for membership really wasn't enough to cover the cost of the items and the manual labor that had to go into sourcing the items and packaging them up and sending them off. And all of this work had to go into doing this really nice thing. So rather than doing a lot of these kind of moving pieces that, frankly was a feel good kind of thing, but wasn't really having a return on investment, they shifted over to an onboarding process that I thought was actually a lot more relevant to members. They focused their energy, instead of these welcome kits, on creating clear, specific initial pathways through the content that they provided as an association. And they switched over to electronic communications that guided their members into the association and gave them the opportunity electronically to spread the word about what was happening. Overall, that actually had more of a wow factor, because it made it more likely that the member was going to come in and experience a quick win that had an impact on their career, which is what this association, it was the focus of what their association was doing. And that outweighed by far the impact of a box of goodies that had been pretty difficult to pull together. So the third piece is consistency. And again, this third piece I feel is more impactful to growth than marketing, because if you think back to what I mentioned when I talked about the changing world, the expectation of 24/7 access and leveraging technology and the pace of movement, focusing on consistency is how you're going to make sure that you're responding to those sorts of expectations. When you look at growing any organization, your warmest relationships are always with the people who already know you and have even potentially expressed interest in your offerings but haven't joined. So the question becomes, how consistently do you follow up with them? How consistently do you put your membership offering in front of them and give them a way to connect in? Now, how are you going to do that when you're a small organization? I think that you have to look at cloning yourself, not literally, but cloning yourself through automations. And automations are, I think, critical because you can't possibly be everywhere and remember everything yourself, especially if you are successful in your growth goal and you start bringing in a steady stream of people. It's going to be more information and more people than you can possibly manage yourself or with a small team. So, this kind of goes right back to, that 10x rule. So as I was thinking about, this concept of consistency and trying to think of, an example for, this point, one specific client came to mind, and I would describe this leader as a natural connector. She has an amazing vision for, her network's growth path. She absolutely knows where she wants to be, and she is great at getting in front of people and meeting them in a, supernatural way. So she meets so many people in the course of her work, but meeting them and then actually getting them into that 8-stage member experience process that I shared earlier, that's the part that just wasn't happening. So she would meet people, but they just weren't getting into that 8-stage flow. So for her, and for most of us, automations is what makes that possible. So what do I mean by automations? So here are just a few examples. So you could meet someone and automatically send them a link to resources via text. You could automatically add contacts to an interest list or to a group. You could automatically send emails on a predetermined schedule. You can automatically note, birthdays and other special occasions. You could designate community ambassadors and automatically notify a community ambassador that someone's interested so that they can follow up. You can send automatically an onboarding sequence. You can automatically send follow-up after an event. You can automatically offer volunteer opportunities and track participation. You can automatically send surveys. There's like so much that, you can think if I were providing a really connected and engaging member experience and I wanted to deliver what members are expecting, in this 24/7 technological movement-driven world, like how would I do that? There's a lot of it that can be done with strategic automation. So, those are just a few examples. And I believe that there's immense power in these three. I mean, they seem really simple things, but they take some planning, they take some strategy around them. But if you focus on them, they will grow your membership organization. But most people just don't think about these. Marketing is it's promoted as the answer to growth problems so much that, it really isn't surprising that, a lot of our organizations are either spending a ton of money on marketing or thinking that we have to spend a ton of money on marketing. But then we do that and we're often disappointed in the results. So, what happens to organizations that kind of, make those investments and, without doing the work involved with these other three internal areas? Well, I call it the wonky wheel. So I don't know if you've ever been if you've ever like had a shopping cart that you're trying to push and it has a wonky wheel. It has one of those wheels that just doesn't spin right. It gets stuck. Maybe it's, stuck at a wrong angle. So, you're trying to push the cart straight and it keeps wanting to go sideways and, it's rattling and it's not comfortable to push along. That is a real pain. Um, it seems like it would be much easier if you could just stop for a moment and fix the wheel, and then you'd be able to move smoothly along with your shopping cart to your shopping destination. But most of us don't do that. Most of us we keep pushing this cart with the wonky wheel. Maybe we don't know how to fix the wonky wheel. So we just tolerate it all the way through, Walmart or the grocery store. But if we could just fix the wheel, it would take care of the problem. So I want to be clear that I'm not saying that marketing doesn't work. I'm just saying that marketing and expecting to get growth out of it isn't going to be as smooth and comfortable and effective as you want it to be if you're operating with a wonky wheel. And the three things that we focused on in this presentation, if you spend a little time on those, they're going to make everything else you do, including your marketing, more effective. So let's say that you do want to implement more of this approach. You say, okay, Joy, I'm buying this. I would like to do more of this sort of work and be more consistent and build capacity and be more connected to members. How do I do that? Well, going back to my roots as a social worker, I believe the way you change anything is you do three things. You prioritize, you plan, and you pursue. So in prioritization, you intentionally decide that you want to advance in this specific area. You plan out exactly how you're going to go after it, and you pursue it relentlessly. You stick to your plan, you track your metrics, and you make adjustments as you go along. And really, that's how you make progress toward anything you want in your organization. So I wanted to leave time for questions, and there's a chat box. So if you have questions, you can type your questions into there, and Donald will let me know if we have questions coming in. But while I'm giving you a couple minutes to do that, I wanted to mention that earlier I said that I had a kind of a one-page tool where you could assess how you're doing in each of the 8 stages. And you can get that if you go to joyofmembership.com/WA Summit, WASUMMIT. I put it there, so you could download that, and it will actually tell you your areas of strength and gap in each of those 8 stages. And it kind of gives you a way on one page to eyeball where you have some opportunities for improvement. So hopefully you will find that helpful. It's my gift to you. So I will just pause there and ask Donald if there are questions that have come in via chat.
Great, thank you, Joy. So somebody here there's an implied question. So somebody says, I agree with you, but it is so much work to be proactive. So that's more of a comment, but I guess there's an implied question about, I guess, the investment in making all of this kind of work. Do you have any advice around that?
Well, like most things in life, you can spend a little time up front being proactive, or you're going to spend the time on the back end and maybe not getting as far as you would like. So it's just one of those trade-offs that we have to make when we're trying to grow an organization. I believe it pays off ultimately in the end.
Yep, I think that's a good answer. So someone here is saying, are there some, where's that question? Are there some specific templates or software programs that you could suggest for building automation practices?
Well, I believe that it is going to completely depend on what else you are using. Of course, Wild Apricot is a great tool. It certainly won't do all of the automations that I mentioned, but there are a lot of different things that you can run alongside Wild Apricot or whatever you are using. What I like to do when I'm meeting with a client for the first time is look at what else do you have available to you? What are you currently using to send out emails? What are you currently using for your website? How do you currently get information out to members and to prospects? How do you currently collect information and tag people? And so we look at what you have and where the gaps are, and if there are tools, if we can use the tools that you're currently using, if we just use them more effectively, or if there are some other things that we can bring in alongside. It truly is an individualized answer. Sorry, it's probably not the answer you wanted, but it really is a custom decision, and the best decision for you is going to be the one that works with what you're already using, or that can be an umbrella under which you pull things.
For sure. And here's maybe a tough question, but if you have any advice around this one, do you think that it is worthwhile to hire a business developer to reach out to prospects?
Ooh, so when I get asked questions like this, I like to use a gardening analogy. So, some people really, really like to garden. They find it therapeutic. They love to put their hands in the dirt and grow something from scratch. And they love the sunshine and, getting the dirt underneath their fingernails. And I absolutely hate that. I do not want to garden. I don't like to be hot. I don't like to be sweaty. I don't like to be buggy. I would rather just go to the store and buy my produce at the grocery store from the farmer's market, have someone else do all of the work for me. It depends on what type of person you are. If you love to connect with people and be out there and build the relationships and sell the organization, and that's really what lights you up, then do that. If that is not what lights you up, if you would rather someone else be that front end person to create leads for you and bring those in, and then you want to nurture people after those relationships have been initially identified, then do that. But it really is a matter of do you want to be the gardener, or do you want to just enjoy the produce? And you can apply that to lots of different things. Should I hire someone to build my membership site, or should I do it myself? Should I hire someone to help me do the administrative support, or should I do it myself? Should I hire someone to generate leads, or should I do it myself? Someone who truly enjoys that work is going to do a far more effective job than someone who doesn't.
Great advice. Thank you, Joy. Here's someone. At what stage do we receive member feedback on their experience? And they say through regular surveys or after certain steps in your member engagement process. So there are actually a few questions sort of around surveys. So maybe you could give advice about that.
Yeah, so I think that you are talking with members all the way along. You're connecting with them around what they want. Now, I think that a lot of organizations ask the wrong questions in their surveys. So what I often hear on surveys is that we're doing these surveys, but it's not all that helpful. People are telling us stuff, but it's not lining up with their behavior. They're telling us what they want, and yet they're doing something different. And I think what matters more is the questions that you ask. So a lot of times we ask people, so what do you want from us? Hey, new member, this is your new member survey. What do you want from the association? Hey, member, this is your renewal survey. What do you want from the association? How can we better serve you? And while those seem like great questions, I don't know that people always know how to answer them. I don't know that they always know what you can do to better help them. So I say at any point in in the member experience, in that journey with you, if you could be asking them about what they want, not what they want from you, but what do they want? Let's say you are, an industry association. What do your members want in terms of their career? And then as the industry association, as you learn more about, what they want, then you can position yourself kind of in that track to support them to get what they want. But a lot of times it's about asking the right question. And I also think that you'll typically get better information back if you're asking members about these things face to face. So if you have events, or you can do focus groups associated with your, in an evening alongside a conference or something like that, you will get more descriptive information than you will get from someone going click, 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 click on a survey.
Thank you, Joy. And there's a bunch of questions about where to start. So someone's saying, with all the possible areas an organization could find they need to improve, how do you decide where to start? Someone's asked sort of relatedly, of the 3 areas you're focused on, where would you start? And then where would you start with the stages? So it's a general, where would you start?
Okay, so if you download that member engagement score sheet, it's going to give you a score in each of the 10 areas. So there are 2 different approaches. When you get your score, you're going to, for each stage, you'll, get a score between 0 and 10. And the closer you are to 10, the closer you are to ideal. That would be an area of strength. And closer to 0, that's a bigger gap that you have to fill. So there are 2 different ways to approach it. You can look at it and go, okay, so we are strongest in these couple of areas, but not quite ideal. So, we can build on our strengths and just do a couple little tweaks in these areas of strength and, make an impact there. Or we can look at our areas of greatest weakness, because if we do something there, then it's probably going to move the dial more than these other areas that we focus on. So there is not a one size fits all answer, but knowing, where you sit with respect with each of those stages, that's where the answer is going to be. Now, most organizations will look at it and they'll immediately think, oh, well, these are the lowest scores, so, this is where I should naturally go. But I think you need to look at it from both angles, both, where are strengths we can build on, and where are the weaknesses or the gaps that we need to fill, because sometimes there are some really quick wins in the strengths area. So if you look at it from both angles, you'll be able to get the custom answer for your organization.
Okay. So here's somebody saying, what if you are competing with other organizations? So I guess in a competitive landscape, are there strategies, an approach or any advice around that you have?
Sure. Well, we are all competing against something. So every dollar that a business or an individual has can be spent in multiple different ways. So, competition is something that we just have to accept that it exists. So my best advice is to know your competition, know what they're offering, know what you offer that's different, and be better at helping your members get what they want. The way to rise above the competition is just to be better at helping them, like at the end of the year, when they look at their experience with your association, help them identify how their life or business or whatever it is that you focus on, help them see how the work that they did with your organization or the work that you did on their behalf, how it made a difference for them. And the organization that wins is going to be the one that does the best job of that. Now, with that being said, you can also look at doing, strategic alignments with your competitors. If you embrace your competitor as a friend who actually wants to help the industry or the audience that you are working with, you want the same things for this audience, you can create some creative collaborations with competitors to have a bigger impact on the industry. I have one client that they actually have a dual membership with another organization that serves the same audience. So if a member joins one association, they actually have they get a membership in the other organization. They do kind of a dues sharing sort of thing, and that has worked out very well for them. So there are certainly some ways that you can look at it, that you can be better, you can collaborate. It just depends on what your relationship is with that competing organization. But ultimately, we're all competing against something.
Yeah, I like the way you framed that. Sometimes it's a question of how you conceive of your competition, and looking at things, say, from a different framework makes sense. Okay, any advice on how to engage older members using technology?
Oh, the funny thing is, some of the older population, they're actually getting more into technology, as they are exiting their careers, and their grandkids are on technology, and they're ordering groceries and things like that. It's becoming a little more acceptable that they're on technology themselves. So I think we're going to see older population becoming more tech savvy, but we still have a ways to go. So I think that, for any of us, whether we are dealing with an older population or not, the most helpful thing that we can do is to make it as easy as possible for our members to access services. So, helping them with tutorials, having, coaching through benefits, having multiple ways for people to learn something or access something. To the extent that, we can do that, we're going to be more responsive to the different ways that people receive information and learn and want to connect with us. So I don't think it's just an older population issue. We probably all have that, the need to do that in different ways. But I do think that, we're all growing up with technology now. So it's going to get, I say it's going to get easier, but at the same time, there are new technologies coming out all the time. And certainly my 23-year-old daughter is far more tech savvy than I am. And I consider myself pretty tech savvy. So overall, I think the best thing you can do is just make multiple ways to engage, multiple ways to learn, multiple ways to get information.
Okay, here's the question about the other end of the generational spectrum. Do you have any strategies to bring in younger members? And that's a big problem in our organization. And I can't believe we are alone with that problem. And that's very true. It's a very common problem. So attracting younger members, I know we've actually had some webinars focus on that. So I'll just recommend to everybody you can go to our website and look up our past webinars. But over to Joy for your thoughts on that.
And I'm going to say it, no matter what audience you are dealing with, you have to learn what they want. You have to be obsessed with learning what they want from their lives, from their business, from whatever the focus is that your organization has. You have to be obsessed with what they want in that line. Now, interestingly, I was speaking on this very subject a few weeks ago to an organization. It's one of those community-based service organizations, kind of like Rotary or Lions Club or that sort of thing. And a lot of those sorts of organizations are struggling with this issue because they've been around in their communities for decades, and their member population is aging. In fact, for this specific organization that I was speaking with, they only had one member under the age of 45. And as I stood there, asking them questions about who they were wanting to serve, they were telling me that they really wanted to draw in parents, parents of kids. That was like the audience that they wanted to, um, they felt would, bring the most into their organization, and that they could help the most or would advance their purpose. So um, I asked them how they were trying to connect with, that audience. And their meetings are on Saturday mornings at like 7:30. Like, how many young parents of school-age children do you think are available to come to meetings at 7:30 on Saturday mornings? Those parents are running their kids to soccer practice and gymnastics lessons and, those sorts of things. Or if they're not parents, they've worked all week and maybe Saturday's the one day they get to sleep in. So I think that, it's twofold, looking at, what your people want, and then really being critical about how you are connecting with them. I mean, are you actually connecting with them in the way that's going to work? Because to me, it seemed obvious that if you want to connect with, young parents, you wouldn't be doing a meeting at 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning. You would be trying to do meetings that align with school functions or PTO or, something like that. Or, having meetings at a park or, something like that where, the parents bring their kids. But yeah, so I just think that a lot of times, whether we're talking about older population or younger population or, anywhere in between, it's a matter of figuring out, where are they, what do they want, and how do you connect, how do you get in front of them in the way that they want, when they want it, where they want it. Sorry, I'm a little passionate about that topic.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joy. And we're coming up close to the end. There's a few things I want to say. One of them is thank you, everybody who has asked questions. Of course, we never get a chance to handle them all, but if you hang on, we'll let you know how we can carry on the conversation. A lot of wonderful questions, and I wish we could go on for another hour, but there are ways we can get to those. So I'll get to that in just a sec, but first, let me just thank you so much, Joy, for spending time with us, sharing your experience and expertise, and giving us some great examples from what you've seen out there, about what doesn't work and what does work. I appreciate that. I want to mention again that we are going to share the recording of this webinar and the slides. We'll do that at the end of the entire summit, so you can look out for an email that'll point you to the resources for that. And also want to say, if you are new to Wild Apricot or have questions for us about that, and certainly some of the things that Joy introduced, about automation and how software can help and all of that, Rano is going to stick around and he can answer some of those questions, and we'll also talk about some free resources and offers in just a moment. But first, I want to let you know that, actually I'm going to just share my screen again. I want to let you know and give you a heads up that our big annual conference, this is our in-person conference, PersonaFest 2019, is going to take place in Savannah, Georgia next April, between the 7th and the 10th. It's a great chance to network with, there'll be hundreds of fellow customers, industry experts, and leaders, and there'll be a bunch of us from the Personify family of companies, including Wild Apricot, of course. You'll have access to a ton of sessions on how to grow and market your organization, as well as sessions specifically on how to get the most out of the software. We'll share more details later, so I just wanted to let you know about that. And as a registrant for the summit, you can get a discount code that you'll be able to use. So in a few weeks' time, we'll let you know more about that. And if you are anxious to carry on the conversation about today's webinar, if you have a question that you did ask, please, I would encourage you to join our Facebook group if you haven't. And Rano is going to paste a link in for that. You can repost your question there. We're going to tag Joy, so Joy will get alerted that you've asked a question and she can answer it there. So it's a wonderful way to keep the conversation going. And of course, any member who's in the group can share their thoughts and experience too. So it's a way for us to all help each other. And Next, if you are new to Wild Apricot, I want to let you know that you can find more free educational content on our academy. And as I mentioned, so some of the topics like how to attract younger members, we've done specific webinars about that. On our academy, you can see there's a section for past webinars, and you can check that out. Rano's going to paste a link in to the chat for the academy, and there's a lot of content there on our blog as well, and resources and guides, and all of that's free, so please help yourself. And lastly, if you are running a membership organization, whether that's a nonprofit, an association, or club, or any type of organization, you are welcome to try our software. No cost for 30 days, so feel free to take advantage of this opportunity, especially if you're looking for ways to automate a lot of the tasks that consume your life. And it's all about, making your organization take on things that are scalable and helping you scale. So Rano's going to paste the link in the chat for that as well. A lot of links that Rano's been sharing. Thank you. So if you click on that link, you'll be taken to our website. You can enter your email, your name, and organization name, and you're ready to go with your free trial. And if you'd like to receive a call from one of our coaches, maybe Rano as well, just type your phone number into the chat, and I'll make sure that one of our coaches gets in touch with you. And if you do have questions, here we are at the top of the hour. About Wild Apricot, and Rano is going to stick around. But again, thank you so much, Joy. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Please stick around if you have questions for Rano, and then jump over to our Facebook group if you like. All right, here is Rano.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Donald, for organizing all of these things and such great insights. It's always helpful to have a different perspective come in and help us understand what tribulations some of our users are going through, or maybe some future users are going to go through, and we can prepare ourselves for it. So I took a couple of notes here that we can address while going in, but please do feel free to put in some of your product related questions. Maybe if you want to ask about if and how Wild Apricot can help you navigate some of the things Joy spoke about today, and we'll try and address them as much as we can, as well as we can. Okay, so for now I have so thank you, lots of thank yous for Joy. Anyone of you guys who are lots of people are asking about whether or not you're going to receive anything from the seminar. Yes, so don't worry about it. If you are registered for the seminars, you will receive the recordings and the slides. The only thing you're going to be missing out on is the Q&A sessions to take part in it. So do please attend the rest of the days, and you'll be able to ask our experts questions directly, and we'll have a good conversation. Let's see, like a Wild Apricot, for example, 1 month follow-up. Okay, so how do I implement the strategic automation Joy spoke about in Wild Apricot? For example, 1 month follow-up, 6 month prior to renewal in Wild Apricot. Now, there are definitely ways. There's going forward, you'll be able to like create things like nurture sequences and stuff like that, and create like email sequences that will go out to people based on the number of days they have joined and so on and so forth. But for the time being, you can actually still do that. What you should be doing is setting up what we call our advanced search and saved searches. This is like one of my favorite features. Okay, you can use any criteria on any custom field or system field or any other fields, and as many other fields as you want, and you can create very catered lists for emailing or other purposes. So once you have this saved search, anybody who joins before the email goes out to the saved search, this list will also, if they qualify for those criteria, will also be added to it. So you don't have to worry about like having to update specific lists or any of that stuff. But what you should be doing is every month you should schedule out emails for, if you want to send this email out for the 31st, you should schedule it out, like work on it beforehand, create the saved search and send it out to the saved search and schedule it out to it a month in advance. For the 6-month one is easier and simpler than that. Like for your specific situation, the 6-month one is your renewal period. So you can easily sneak in any information you like, any content you like in one of the renewal reminder emails. So you can send up to 3 renewal reminder emails, and you can set 3 different ones. You can send all 3 the same, just with different information, or one of them you can save for some like extra special information, or however you would like to do it. You can totally do all of that. Let me see. I can't register. Apologize. I'm sorting through some of the questions that are coming in, and some of the comments. For instance, we need the mailing list, just like. Okay, I think Jen is asking about something to do with events. It's a fairly long question. It seems like it is a little bit in depth into the product. I'm going to say by our previous volunteering position. Jen, I'm going to say, like, you sound like an expert user. I'm just going to say, please feel free to check in on our tech support department. They're probably going to be able to help you out a little bit better. In this format, I'm having a hard time like reading lengthy questions, so it won't be as relevant to the rest of the group listening in. So please, I invite you to get in touch with us and have a lengthy conversation with one of our tech support agents, and they're awesome. I'm sure if you have dealt with them, you would know. So let's say choose link. How do I? Oh yeah, Jen, don't worry. You can go to wildapricot.com and contact us page, and you'll find the tech support information. What I'm going to do is I'm going to address this. There's some questions about older non-tech savvy population in your membership crew, and what you can do with them, using maybe to a certain extent using Wild Apricot, maybe not, but you can especially when you're like switching over to a comprehensive membership management platform like Wild Apricot. I usually tend to advise new users that this is firstly a good time to reconsider your membership dues, your membership fees, because you're about to present a lot of value to your membership, and this may be a good time for you to consider raising your membership fees. That's one solid thing that I always advise. The other thing is keeping in mind your older, less tech savvy population, and to that end, there's a few things that talking to different organizations and stuff, we have an idea of make sure you allow them to reach out to you for help. So you can have, if you guys have a clubhouse or a location anywhere, make sure there's a couple of computers lying around so that they can try things out that are always open on your home site or your home page and stuff. You could have a volunteer group that will help transition these older members into the new system. You could even have like call-in periods, like Sundays, if you're in on site available, just allow them to call and ask you questions between a specific time period, stuff like that. Like, do approach it with empathy and allow them to come to you, but also when you're designing your system, something like Wild Apricot, for the future, don't design it allowing people to train themselves onto something that is older. So although Wild Apricot does allow you to accept checks and manual payments, let these be exceptions, absolute exceptions. Don't have both options just equally priced, both available, so that they're like, okay, yeah, I can just drop in and give them a check. And you create this cycle of like, what if they forget? What if they don't do it on time? You don't have a steady stream of revenue, so on and so forth. But train them towards the new thing. Allow them to come access help from you, and absolute exceptions, which happens. Like you have someone who is extremely senior, absolutely don't want to learn anything new. That's absolutely fine too. But allow them to reach out, and these are exceptions. You can deal with 5 exceptions. You can deal with 10 exceptions. But if you train your future potentially more tech savvy people to have options both way, you are creating a continued pool of people, somebody or the other, who will continue to give you checks or who will continue to give you cash, stuff like that. So train your member base out of that situation and towards a workflow that is more automated, more modern, more future proof for your organization. That is the most important thing. Um, or platforms like Wild Apricot would allow you things like email tracking. So you can A/B test. Maybe to your older members, you don't want to send everything. You want to send them like pertinent information, important information. Maybe make a separate list for them. Very easy to do on Wild Apricot. You don't have to send everything to everyone. You can just like you can create a list for 10 people or 15 people. Just like, okay, you know what, these people have expressed themselves that they would rather have, you don't want to read through, or you can check actually through the email tracking. You can check how many people are receiving the emails you're sending to them, so a delivery report, or how many people are actually opening the email, like an open rate, and which people are opening and which people are not, and also a click-through rate, like which people and who are clicking on what link that you have included in a specific email. So with all that information going forth, the next one, always plan things in iterations, which makes things easier. Don't feel like you have to hit it out of the park the first newsletter you send out, but practice them in iterations. If your newsletter goes out once a month or once every 2 months or something, or twice every month, just have a plan where you can plan, like you can gather information and apply it to the next one. So for the older people, maybe you can design something which is straightforward and just some information newsletter, and allow them a link where we're like, if you want to read our full length newsletter, click on here and you can access the whole thing. And you'll know how many of those people are actually clicking on that through using the click-through metrics, and then you will know that, okay, maybe there's just only 2 people, maybe I don't need to have the separate list, so on and so forth. Just using the exact same tech, you can create and design A/B tests. Be like, okay, out of my 500 people in my member base, I can send out newsletter A, a simplified version, to one group, and newsletter B, maybe a little bit more graphic intense, something using one of our templates and stuff, newsletters to the second group, and see how unique your member base's response is. And maybe one of them gets more click-throughs, gets more open. You can test out different subject lines. Maybe just saying this month's newsletter is not very attractive to people. Maybe you can have a highlight as a subject line. Be like, we're celebrating 5 birthdays this month, something like that. I mean, like, that doesn't have to be it, but whatever, like whatever highlight you want to, maybe you can incorporate that into the subject line and test which subject line or which kind of subject lines work better for you. So there's lots of ways of trying and marketing tips and tricks that you can use using some of the core Wild Apricot functionality, and also some workarounds, like you can, if Wild Apricot's core analytics and tracking is not enough for you for your website, it is possible for you to embed Google Analytics or any other tool into your site and figure things out, and try to get a more in-depth understanding of your viewers and visitors. Maybe you're wasting time updating a specific page on your website, like it gets one visit every 6 months and something. It was like, okay, that's not a page I want to have to update anymore. Take it out, make it more simplified. So there's lots and lots and lots of ways of doing this, and we constantly keep updating our blog, our academy. There's a great team here. We share knowledge amongst ourselves, and we share knowledge with you, and we learn so much from you. So thank you for keep attending. Thank you for asking these questions. We look forward to the rest of the week, guys, and please keep visiting and keep turning up for the other expert webinars throughout the year, and other webinars that we hold, product-based, knowledge sharing based webinars. So as always, it's a great pleasure. It's great talking to you guys at the end of these webinars and stuff. So thank you again, and we'll keep talking for the rest of the week. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.